Hey guys, welcome to another session of Epic 7. We're going to talk about my initial thoughts for Elphelt. In another video, I will talk about Ray. Both of them released today, actually. It depends on when you watch the video, it might not make sense. Regardless, Elphelt is limited. Guilty Gear Collab Hero is the newest one. Still weird. I'm gonna still talk about this here a bit just because I feel it's still kind of weird. Limited hero, 1 week, and comes at the end. And good thing is though, she's not broken. Like compared to Dizzy, I think Dizzy is much better to pull for. She seems to be, right now, looking at her, she seems to be really good for cleave comp setup. So if you are someone that loves like stylized cleave teams, I think she might be the one for you. I think comparing like some roles, she might be a decent Tywin like replacement in terms of like a Bazaar Tywin cleave comp. She might be okay for that, although it's still kind of unknown at this point. So for example, if you kill, you can use a Sasha artifact to proc the CR boost for your entire team, and if you crit, you can get C-Dom in there, so you can get quite a bit of CR boost in terms of like a cleave comp. But regardless, here are the stats. The Ranger, Capricorn, Fire. Second Fire Ranger, that was a 5-star. First one being Lidica. Beautiful Lidica. We got another waifu. Again, it's interesting actually, the Lidica skin, because it's wedding dress with roses. This one again with more roses and a white dress. Interesting. There's definitely a theme here. The Capricorn is basically Earth Bologna. So the same stats. Speed is okay. As Rangers, their health is always pretty impressive. Defense is slightly lower. The imprint concentration is at 27%. Even though she's a limited hero, I don't think you should really be chasing for it. She already has innate 30% effectiveness in her own stats, so I don't really think you should need to chase that 27. But yeah, I guess if you have a couple and if you go for the artifact, which we'll talk about at the end of this video here, if you go for the artifact and you do pull her, I mean, you may as well self-imprint her and help you with your promotions. This is the S3 Magnum Wedding, 5-turn cooldown with -1, so 4 turns if you mold this to a +3, 100% effect if you mold to a +4, 100% chance to put them to sleep for 1 turn, decreased defense for 2 turns, and then grants the caster an extra turn. Now, this whole skill in and of itself is actually very, very nice to set up for herself and for the rest of your team, and we'll get into skill 2 and see how that gels together. So in terms of like a overall hero, I think she's very well made in terms of like all of her skills kind of work well together, but like kind of like after the S3 S2 turn, she kind of sits there. So it's kind of good that she does have Bologna stats because it is pretty tanky, and realistically going into most cleave comps now, whether in a GVG cleave or arena cleave, realistically you do want a strip to go before she does, since even though she can strip 1 buff, as you can see they're dispelling 1 buff, for her S2 to really shine, I think you need to strip everyone's immunity or everyone's possible immunity. So anyways, it reads that you can dispel 1 buff, so if they have immunity, you can dispel it, and then you can put them to sleep for 1 turn, 100% again if you molo it, and then you have a 2-turn defense break, and it grants an extra turn. Now, the damage, in terms of raw damage, there's not much going into the S3. So the S3 is really to set her up for her S2. There's only 20% raw damage. I would definitely not recommend maxing that one. Here's a screenshot of like part of her animation in terms of her S3, and this is like the following shot. What's interesting is that for those of you who are familiar with Guilty Gear and you know her actual animation, she actually pulls that bullet from her, what's the better word to say here? From her bosom? Bosom? Yeah, I'm gonna go with bosom. But if you actually like do yeah, cookie jar. Yeah. She pulls the bullet out of a cookie jar. All right. All right, I would make more jokes about this, but it would go down a very bad line. All the suggestions from the stream chat. Anyways, but in the original, in the actual Guilty Gear, she pulls it deep within her cookie jar. But in the Guilty Gear one, she hardly even. Well, you know she pulls it from that place, but they don't show it. Anyways, let's keep going. I wanted to insert that in because it's pretty funny, in my opinion. It's pretty funny. Okay, so here's the S2. Skill 2, called Judge Better Half. Traps the enemy in the cake before attacking them with a cake cutting blade, increasing critical hit chance for all allies for 2 turns. And then when the enemy is defeated, decreases defense for all remaining enemies for 2 turns. And then, sorry, this slide is actually a bit off center here. There you go. Apologies for that. But then damage dealt increases. Sorry, damage dealt proportionate to the number of debuffs inflicted on the enemy. Not only that. Okay, not only that. Of course we need the damage mods here. But I think this is going with like a Bazaar cleave, right? So Bazaar, you can strip it. Cerise is good too, I think, for her. Like Bazaar does have lower base speed than Elphelt does, but it's not too hard to make her a bit slower. But Cerise is a very, very good option as the strip, because she can do 2 debuffs if you do land both, and then it does more damage, right? If they have more debuffs inflicted. So realistically, S3, you put them to sleep. They have a death break as well. That's 4 debuffs if you use Cerise. If you use a Bazaar, you got unbuffable, so that's 3 debuffs. So that's very good, assuming that all of them land, of course. And the S3, of course, is 20 souls. You can ignore the effect resistance. Although she is not a mage herself, most people who run cleave comps like slot in some mages here and there. Usually C-Dom. She's kind of like the chain that links like cleave comps together. So yeah, if you have a C-Dom in there, you can ignore the resist to make sure that death break does land, and you put him to sleep. And because if you could put him to sleep based on the S3, you don't even need to build her with really high crit rate, because the first turn doesn't really matter if you crit or do crit damage. Again, the raw mola doesn't justify the damage on the S3, but you're setting up, right? So you set up, you get a death break, which is already really good. You get put him to sleep, you're gonna get the crit on the next turn. So on this turn for the S2, if you kill them, then you can land potential defense break for all the remaining enemies for 2 turns, but the first target has to be killed. So one of the targets has to be killed by this skill. That's the only way it can happen. What's really good about this death break though is that it's elemental agnostic, which means that she being a fire, you could defense break an ice hero as long as they don't resist it, and as long as they don't have immunity. So it's actually very, very useful. So unlike, for example, like Tywin, if you use the Tywin for the Bazaar cleave comp, you literally have to land your S3 in order, like on let's for example on a Earth hero, but for her you don't need to. And of course she does the crit rate buff as well, like Tywin does, but it's for all allies. The only thing missing, of course, you're missing an attack buffer in between presuming you do run a strip first and then run her, you're missing an attack buffer in between for your massive cleave. But the defense break, arguably speaking, is already really good. And then, like I said, the damage increases proportional to the number of debuffs inflicted on the enemy. Most likely, if you're gonna use a cleave, you're gonna aim for someone a bit weaker, maybe. It depends how much damage your Elphelt will eventually do. But again, do recognize that if you are going to cleave, you do have to chase some speed, so you may lack a bit of damage. The raw mola damage on this is actually very impressive. It's 45% damage dealt. That's very, very high. So I'm actually assuming, because it's a conditional defense break, I'm assuming that this skill itself will probably be very strong in terms of the damage mod. That's just presumption though. But even if it's low and it does proportional damage based on the number of debuffs with a 45% raw mola here, I don't think she'll have a problem killing with like a standard, like let's say, I don't know, 2.5k attack, and 250 crit damage, as long as you can get the speed, of course. So I think this would be I think this skill itself will be really good. So like I said, I think the S3, S2 gels well together. The S1 I'm kind of like with, like a 75% chance to get an unbuffable for one turn is very good. I said this about Lilibet before when she was released. I think her max is only a 50, maybe a 60 at the max. I don't remember. I never max molded it. But it's really good to have that on an S1. So for example, if you dual attack into her, she might be able to land the unbuffable as well, up to a 75% chance. To be honest, a 75% chance unbuffable with a hero that is meant to debuff, I think this is worth molding to the +3. So if obviously, it depends if you really want to use her for your comp. If you want to invest in her, I do think that a +3 on the S1 is justified. 75% is very nice to have. The very last thing is Miss Confile, her limited artifact. Now, this artifact is very, very good compared to Baiken's Torn Sleeve, which we really saw more usefulness now because of Wyvern 13. Otherwise, it was kind of like, it wasn't really used even in the past year. Like, people used it because they had it, and it kind of like just fell off. Because like getting an extra bleed while it's on a thief, it's very hard to use. Like, let's say in a PvP scenario. PvE scenarios, Torn Sleeve is fine. Necro Undine becomes really weird too, because like not a lot of mages can really benefit from Necro Undine except Dizzy herself. But Dizzy using Violin or Abyssal Crown made her to be much scarier too. So that artifact is not really used either. And then Miss Confile though, I think is on another level. Although it's only a 60% chance to defense break if you max limit break this one on a single target attack. It's still really good, right? So like a defense break is usable everywhere, whether in PvE or PvP. But even though it's a single target defense break at a 60%, it's still really good to have. I think that if I do get this artifact, and I'm going to try to get it, if I do get this artifact, I want to try running this on my Wyvern 13 team for SSB's S1. So SSB's S1 has, I think it's 75% or something, a 70% proc rate for the target debuff. And then you can get, like, if you do max limit break this, of course, get up to 60% chance to get a defense break as well. So 2 debuffs in 1 skill. For someone like SSB, but there's a lot of heroes that can benefit from this artifact. But keep in mind that it's also a single attack, but it's not limited to the S1. I think it only means a single target attack. But of course the condition is that it is not activated by a counter attack, a dual attack, or an extra attack, which is nice as well. Oh, actually, yes, hey, I'll give a shout out to Giovanni on the stream here. He says Cerise. Yeah, Cerise would work too, because Cerise's S2 and S1 could benefit from this as well. So yeah, this is insanely good artifact. Probably the best limited artifact out of the 3, the most usable one. So I definitely think that if you pull for Elphelt, and you get the artifact multiple, you're super lucky. This artifact is really good. I would say that just because it does a death break, you might even want to keep 2 copies and maybe over time just Bottle of Knowledge it. If you're not a whale, of course, if you're not a whale. But we're talking about a very long period of time. The good thing is though, if you do get it at a +15, I believe, like, so 1 copy maxed, I believe it would be a 45% chance to defense break. And hey, I mean, look, 45%, only 5% off from 50%, right? So you're like an SSB S2. Like, how many times does the SSB S2 50% defense break proc actually lands it? So I would take that 45, you know. So I think that'd be good. Someone said that Yuna AOE defense break S1. No. It's a single target attack, not the S1. Yeah, so it's not AoE, it's single target, not S1, right? So single target S3 would work as well. So i.e. someone like Fire Litica. Fire Litica would work too. Judging by the reading of this, well, yeah. So sometimes the translations are very weird, but judging by the reading of this, it means a single target attack. Any single target attack would work. All right. So an additional portion to the video. Later at night, we got the damage mods on her skills. Doesn't look too great. We're seeing that she will definitely need a lot of stats. I mean, if I pull up the stats here again. 115 speed, very good base. 30 effectiveness, very helpful, but she still needs effectiveness. Realistically, she still needs some effectiveness. If you're gonna use her in a cleave comp setup, here's the debate. If you're using her in a cleave comp setup, most people, let's say in arena or something, will run kind of tankier teams. If you're gonna use her to cleave into like a squishy reverse cleave defense team, let's say an arena or something, you may not even need her. But here are the damage mod. The S1 is a 1x mod, 1 POW. Judge Better Half, which is the S2, is a 1x mod, but a 0.85 POW. Although the S2, like we discussed before, does have a conditional damage scaling based on the amount of debuffs. We did run this into a maths calculator, so I mean, each debuff does actually grant quite an additional amount of damage. We are running around 2,700 attack, thinking that she might need some speed and effectiveness. 2,700 attack with a 1,003 base attack and a 270 crit damage. She doesn't need that much crit rate, but we're putting that into, like, let's say effectiveness or whatever. With each debuff scaled, she increases about 1,000 damage. With about 3 debuffs, she does about like 9,000 to 10,000 damage, roughly, on that build. This is after a defense break as well, because her S3 does the defense break. The S3 does 1.1 times mod, but a 1x POW. But in terms of the Mola Gora in her skill there though, you're not getting a lot. You're not getting a lot on the S3. So, and the S2, while I did say that it is very high in terms of like actually high raw damage, again, we checked it in the damage calculator, not looking too good. But of course, we're running it on someone, assuming that there was an Aureus, and running with someone around the 1350 defense, which is more and more common in terms of like a minimum amount of defense you want to run on a bruiser defense team, with the I90s in mind. So the Hunt 13 I90s. With the damage mods now out, my thoughts on her, I don't think it hasn't really changed much. I am a bit disappointed that the S2 is a little bit weaker than I thought it would be, but I think she could still kill. But basically, if you're gonna cleave comp setup and use her, you have to look at who the squishiest hero is, like literally, and then kill them off in order to apply the defense break. And still, the problem is that even though a soul burn, you can ignore resistance on her S3, so the defense break and the sleep, you can ignore it, but she still needs effectiveness, because if you're gonna kill off someone and apply the S2 defense break, it still needs to run through the resistance check. In fact, if you looked at the video that I pulled these images from, the Smilegate, the Epic 7 video, after she killed someone, the Fallen Cecilia wasn't debuffed in terms of like she resisted it. So the 15% resist check will always be there. But so you need some of your effectiveness to roll the RNG your way, if you're gonna trust her at least for your cleave comp. Anyways, now I'll truly end the video here. If you guys have Discord, check out the Discord server. Follow me on Twitter, subscribe to YouTube if you haven't. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time.